watching Businessworld Live. I'm Dani Laurel.
And I'm Jess De Los Santos. Here are the biggest stories to kickstart this trading day Thursday. Following the successive rounds of oil price hikes, inflation jumps to 4.9% in April.
With less than 2 months left in the Duterte administration, Malacanang has formed a transition committee to ensure a smooth transfer of power to the next president.
And we're 4 days away from the May polls, and presidential candidates are doubling their efforts to woo more voters.
And Metro Pacific Investments reaps higher earnings in the first quarter. We begin our broadcast with April inflation coming in at 4.9%. That's falling near the higher end projection of the Bangko Sentral.
Now recall that the Bangko Sentral projected an acceleration of inflation between 4.2 to 5%. The April inflation print is a jump from the 4% recorded in March and 4.1% in April 2021. The main sources of inflation growth for the month of April includes food and non-alcoholic beverages, transportation costs, and housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels. Year-to-date average inflation now stands at 3.7%. This falls on the higher end of the government's 2 to 4% target for the year. Malacanang has formed a committee that aims to ensure a smooth transition of power to President Duterte's successor. Acting spokesperson Martin Andanar said the transition committee will be led by Executive Secretary Salvador Medialdea. Andanar has yet to disclose other members of the committee. Back in February, the president said he had already started packing his things and that he is ready to talk to the next president. But before that transition happens, Filipinos will have the huge task of selecting our next set of leaders on May 9 to help ensure a clean, safe, and honest elections is the Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting. Now, to tell us more about the tough task ahead for them, we have the PPCRV's chairperson, Myla Villanueva. Good morning, Myla. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me.
All right, so how different is this election going to be? I mean, this is, of course, our first pandemic election. So what has changed in the PPCRV's preparations and strategy?
Well, first of all, we have conducted quite a lot of voter education campaigns to remind our voters to prepare. We are still in the middle of a pandemic, so it's important for them to try to prepare themselves. For example, getting their votes ready at hand, bringing, their sheets of paper so that, and also finding their precincts through the COMELEC precinct finder in order that they can get in and out of the precincts as soon as possible.
Myla, does this in any way affect, in your opinion, the voter turnout, particularly since the registration also happened at the height and the peak of the pandemic? People wanted to register, but many could not possibly. And also the expectation of how many will go out there and really vote.
Danny, we're expecting an 80% turnout, actually. This is a very polarized, emotional election for many people, and they do want to be heard. So, for example, even our volunteer team, we thought that we would not reach our targets, but we have about 500,000 volunteers going out to 106,000 precincts in 37,000 voting centers. So you can imagine the scale of the work, but everybody's very ready, and it's been quite amazing.
Okay, given that, Myla, give us an idea. I mean, you mentioned 500,000 volunteers. Do you still need more? How do they sign up? And at the same time, what's the task ahead for the volunteers? I mean, of course, we're talking about an automated election in the middle of a pandemic. So may additional trabaho ba yung mga volunteers natin?
Well, they're just different things that we remind them of. For example, our work is really around poll watching and the unofficial parallel count. So in the polls, expect that our volunteers will be in the voters' assistance desk to help people find their precincts. But I do hope that you already know by the time you go there. We don't want that to be a choke point. We also are conducting the unofficial parallel count at the end of election night, and it's a large logistics operation. At 7 o'clock, when the polls close, our volunteers collect the election returns around these 106,000 precincts, and this will be brought to our command center at the University of Santo Tomas for validation and verification.
Okay. Myla, let's talk about trust in the system and to what extent this is hinged on the level of automation. Have we achieved at least a level of automation? Because there's still some, barangays, smaller precincts that are not fully automated. The lab voting, for example, as
Even
well.
us, we voted
Even
manually.
us, we voted manually. We filled in the ballots, OFWs as well. To what extent have you guarded or have safeguards for these non-automated votes?
And even for the automated, I
Even
guess,
for
because
the
there are still
automated
concerns
also.
of cheating, especially in the past elections. There have been allegations that have been made. So how do we ensure that the votes are safe?
Every election will have its issues. There's no perfect election, but in any case, there have always been incremental improvements. Let's just remind our viewers, we've become a little used to automation, but the problems of the manual system in the past were far worse, where you had ballot snatching and that you couldn't even audit. At this time, we've spent a lot of time really looking at the process and working with the COMELEC, challenging but also cooperating with them in terms of improvements with the best experts in the country as far as technology is concerned. I myself have been 34 years in technology, so we conducted source code reviews. We've really from May 2 to May 7, our volunteers are doing the final testing and sealing, where 10 ballots are voted upon to check if the VCMs at precinct level is counting as they should be. And the all-important unofficial parallel count, when we pick up, by law, we are accredited to pick up the fourth copy of that election return. No, the meaning of that, copy 1 to 8, is pre-transmission. It is a copy before the VCM transmits. All these are brought to our command center, and we actually compare it with the electronic returns that are sent by the VCM. So your paper trail plus your electronic count is being matched. Mano a mano, one at a time, actually double blind, by 200 volunteers a day at the University of Santo Tomas. That ensures that no dagdag bawas is happening during the transmission. So that's another level of, additional credibility to the public. In 2019, we had 87,000 precincts. We picked up 77,000 returns, and we matched 63,000 at a 99.995 match rate, which means really no dagdag bawas is happening when you give your ballot to the machine.
Okay. Now, Myla, of course, another concern, you have one company, and a logistics company, particularly F2 Logistics, of course, by Dennis Uy, an ally of the president, has bagged deals to transport materials for the election. And there are concerns, of course, regarding those deals, rather. So, question now is, should that really be a cause for concern?
Well, I don't know Mr. Uy personally, but let me just say that I've also gone to F2 Logistics unannounced and announced at the same time. And the people there are working very hard. The machines are already where they need to be. We've not heard major problems of it being absent or whatnot, because, again, the final testing and sealing is happening already, May 2 to May 7. And the machines are where they should be. The ballots are where they should be. So unless there's something that, and we will be the first one to raise a flag, so far everything has been delivered to where it needs to be.
Okay, and finally, Myla, concerns about the IT system. As you mentioned, there's always going to be issues. So on the one hand, the fair transmission, but on the other hand, just the simple possibility that there could be a system glitch, that the infrastructure cannot take it. What are your contingency plans in that event?
Well, it's the COMELEC who should have contingency plans, and they do. Data centers, which we visited and had been open to the media on that day, everything was set in place. So I think we have more robust data centers that are housing our servers. Aside from that, let's remind ourselves that the source code review has happened, and there's an identity to the software, no? That is also, the software is kept in the vaults of the central bank. So if there's anything that happens, we can audit, we can forensic because it's automated, and we can always compare to the source code review or the source code that we have reviewed, all 67 people, including political parties, that are housed in the vaults of the central bank. So again, it won't be perfect. Everybody has to be diligent, but we've done the best we can, and as well as other citizens' arms to ensure that we help the public have a chambered, clean and honest, accurate, meaningful and peaceful election.
Thank you very much for all those efforts. It's going to be a very, very big challenge, a few days away. But of course, some trust in the system and of course in our volunteers. Thank you very much. 500,000 volunteers there to be deployed by the PPCRV. Thank you so much, Myla Villanueva, PPCRV Chairman.
Thank you, and thank you to the PPCRV volunteers. Thank you.
Now let's all find out where presidential candidates are headed today. The UNI team will be holding the Mindanao leg of their meeting de avance at the Tagum City Hall grounds in Davao del Norte this afternoon. Isko Moreno's team is now making rounds in parts of Leyte. The Manila mayor arrived in Maasin City as early as 7:30 a.m. He will then travel to Sogod, then to Tacloban, where he will be holding a grand rally at 8 o'clock p.m. The Lacson Soto tandem, meanwhile, is campaigning around Mindanao. The tandem arrived in Cotabato at 8:30 this morning. Their activities include a town hall meeting in Ampatuan, Maguindanao, a press conference in Cagayan de Oro, then another town hall meeting at the Tablon Gym. On the other hand, Senator Manny Pacquiao is expected to continue campaigning in the province of Cebu. And after his meeting de avance in Quezon City, Caliodi de Guzman will be attending an all-leaders assembly in Barangay San Jose, that's in Antipolo, Rizal, this morning. And finally, Vice President Leni Robredo will be visiting parts of Misamis Occidental and Agusan del Sur today. VP Leni will first attend a multi-sectoral assembly in Oroquieta City, then a people's rally in Ozami City, and finally another sortie in Prosperidad, Agusan del Sur.
Now, coming right up after the break, Metro Pacific reports higher net core income in the first quarter, with the conglomerate saying it benefited from economic recovery and POL-related activities.
More of that and other stories when Business World Live returns. Stay with us.
you're still watching Business World Live here on One News. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danny Laurel.
All right, Dan, moving away from election coverage for a second and focusing on corporate earnings. You have a couple to break. Tell us more.
Well, Jess, I actually have a lot to break, but let's focus on a couple. First of all, Metro Pacific first quarter net income was 5.7 billion pesos. That's actually down by 19% year on year. However, when you take a look at the core net income, that was 3.1 billion pesos or 23% higher year on year. They mentioned that the conglomerate benefited from economic recovery and intensified election-related activities. Now, another very interesting thing is the toll road traffic close na to pre-pandemic levels, and even the power consumption has increased as, of course, our economy has reopened. But Chairman MVP does say it is too early to give earnings estimates or guidelines for 2022, but they did mention they may be completing 3 acquisitions this year. Also even said they're interested to buy Ayala Corp's stake in the LRT1, but there are some uncertainties to this. Let's take a listen.
We're aware that the other group, including one more, have signified their intention to divest. No, we have a ROFR, don't we? MPIC. So we said that we're looking at it. A great deal of it will depend on the outcome of the elections, actually, because we need to understand what the new president might do in respect of LRT1, because we have pending applications for tariff adjustments, tariff increases for LRT1, which have not been given since the concession was given sometime in 2015. So it's been 7 years where we've spent quite a bit of money to rehabilitate the existing system of LRT1, like replacing the rails. And I think starting today, Generation 4 trains will be deployed on the system, no, on the existing system of LRT1. And we have started the construction of the extension of LRT1 all the way to Bacoor. No? Pending again on the election outcome, we will have to make a judgment as to whether there's a decent chance that the next president would be more open or sympathetic to a tariff adjustment.
And just another Conglo has news that is, of course, LTG Group. They have announced that 29-year-old grandson of Lucio Tan will become the next president by April 2023. And this, of course, comes as they pronounce their net income 20.25 billion pesos. That's down 3.7%. And tobacco was actually 86% of this net income, Jess, even as the volumes of tobacco dropped 10.8% compared to 2020. They also mentioned that they will be raising capex to 12 billion pesos from the 9 billion pesos in 2021.
All right, now, well, these earnings releases are not really helping the bourse bounce back. How are we doing this Thursday on the back of that inflation print?
Jess, I have to say, I mean, the good news is that we did finally bounce back, if I can pick up my terminal for you here. But nevertheless, this, of course, happens as we had a lot of issues. The Fed raised their rates by 50 basis points yesterday. And then we did have this higher than expected inflation print here in the Philippines, 4.9% year on year for the month of April. But take a look at our bourse finally jumping. So in 3 days, we're now up by 1 6/10%. That's after we fell we were the worst in Asia. Yesterday, we fell to an 8-month low. And since our February peak, we're down by 11%. So that's quite a correction. Nevertheless, making our way back to 7,000 levels. Just let's see how long this rally is going to last.
DTI-led Small Business Corporation says it will launch a new loan program to support MSMEs with a 6.7 billion peso funding. SB Corp says the program, known as Rise Up, aims to provide support to some 42,000 MSMEs. Spokesperson Robert Bastillo says Rise Up will offer a multi-purpose loan for multi-sectoral MSMEs, a loan product for small retailers, and a loan product for tourism businesses. Loan amounts are between 10,000 and 5 million pesos, and eligible applicants must have been in operation for at least a year.
Now, the Customs Bureau has exceeded its April collection target. That's as the value of imported oil continued to climb. Now, in a statement, the BOC said it collected over 65 billion pesos in April, which is nearly 20% higher than its almost 55 billion peso target for the month. Last month's collection also showed a 28% increase from the amount collected in the same period of last year. But it was also 7% lower than the record high 70.7 billion pesos logged in March. Citing preliminary reports from the BOC Financial Service, the Bureau said that 14 out of the 17 collection districts hit their targets last month. These included the ports of San Fernando, Manila, Batangas, Legazpi, and Iloilo, among others. The strong collections in April pushed the 4-month total to nearly 254 billion pesos, which makes up nearly 37% of the 2022 target.
Meralco says it will heed the order of the Energy Regulatory Commission to refund more than 7.7 billion pesos in excess collections to their customers. In a statement, the power distributor said the refund is equivalent to 47 centavos per kilowatt hour for residential customers. Meralco says the refund will appear as a separate line item in power bill starting this month. The overcharges will be refunded for a period of 12 months, bringing the total to 46 pesos and 69 centavos per kilowatt hour. That's equivalent to a 93 peso refund for a residential customer consuming 200 kilowatt hours per month. All right, Dan, just a few days away before the elections.
Anxiety na ba, Jess?
Nakakakaba na, exciting.
Nakakakaba.
Okay. But of course, again, we all need to come prepared for the election day. Try to think of who you're going to vote for as early as now. In fact, dapat dati pa yan. And then come with your cheat sheets as much as possible. Avoid putting your chosen candidates on your smartphone. Isulat nyo na lang.
Tama, bawal din. So we actually need to come prepared and be very well researched, Jess. May oras pa.
Yes, and that's a first look into the business day this Thursday, May 5, 2022. Join us again tomorrow at exactly 9:30 a.m. You can also catch us on Signal Play. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News Live anytime, anywhere. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danny Laurel. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.